Hey Pokemon fans, Draspy here. Today we're going to be talking about Amourshipping and Pokeshipping, specifically a face-off between the two in an analytical sort of debate, except the debate will be between myself. Anyway, that aside, as we all know, Amourshipping is between Ash and Serena, and then we also know that Pokeshipping is between Ash and Misty. What some people don't acknowledge is how both ships have had a huge impact on the series, regardless of your preferences. So let's start with Pokeshipping. So as we all know, it started with Ash taking Misty's bike in a chance encounter, and then Misty appeared to follow him out of admiration, showing typical signs of an infatuated girl. And the rest is history. The shipping is often characterized by special concern, reoccurring jokes having to deal with romance where they're thrown together as a couple or at least a pair, jealousy, and the sort of denial and kind of blushing and stuff that goes on with your typical sort of younger relationships, which are kind of marked by this sort of tension or denial, and it's sometimes called tsundere or anger love. Those are various ways I've heard it. The point is, this relationship definitely marks why Pokeshipping has stayed in the hearts of many people for its classic way, especially in children's anime. However, while this is all well and good and everyone loves this, at least all the Pokeshipping community tends to love this sort of dynamic that's going on, and that is typical of the early generations of the Pokemon anime and of the more recent Sun and Moon anime. There is a few issues that do arise. However, the issues that do arise is mainly like, is Ash even interested? Because, you know, he kind of appears naive and sort of dense in the entire anime series. In the Ghost of Maiden's Peak episode, in which we see Brock become infatuated with a ghost who, according to an old woman, is supposed to attract all men and then do something terrible to them involving death and destruction, blah 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 blah, usual warnings. The point being, Ash isn't attracted to her, thus leading to some of the evidence for Ash not being interested in girls. However, later that episode, we see Ash interested in Misty wearing a kimono, even though supposedly he wasn't interested in the opposite gender at all. Later the same episode. I mean, that's pretty solid counter evidence. In the same episode, Ash with the blank face and especially kind of the background that was going on when he was looking at her shows that he did have interest and acknowledgement, and the blank face later appears to be Ash's version of attraction, or not even attraction, just noticing, which some of you might say, but for me, a blank face Ash is sufficient evidence to say that he at least notices Misty and has the capability of liking her. Next issue isn't really an issue and just more of a question. Does Misty like Ash? Unlike Ash, her hints can't be simply dismissed out of a lack of romantic sense or some sort of immaturity, since she A is more mature and B does not have the lack of romantic sense that Ash has been seen to have. Therefore, it is quite obvious that Misty's hints are more inclined to point to some sort of crush or some sort of liking for Ash, whereas, well, you may misconstrue Ash's hints to say that he simply is deeply attached to her in the friendship way, Misty's hints are much harder to put that way. Therefore, I feel safe in concluding that she does like him, even though it is not canon, it is highly suggested. Ready for another issue? Ash is significantly younger than Misty, considering that there's a 2-year age gap, and considering 10 and 12 is the difference, it seems highly unlikely that a 12-year-old girl would develop a crush on a 10-year-old. However, this is anime, so that logic is kind of thrown out the window as a result, leaving us with just those Orange Island gym leader dudes. I think one of them was Danny and some guy that started with an R. I don't really care about his name. He gave Misty flowers, proposed marriage, whatever. They didn't really end up doing much, even though like it was all like, oh, they're more mature, that's why I'm into them. But then in the end, she ended up choosing Ash anyway, even though he was obviously less mature. So we find out that the real sticking point is loyalty to Ash, which kind of rules out any sort of, well, you know, Ash isn't mature enough arguments. So it's a pretty clear-cut case. Misty likes Ash. Ash, even if he doesn't like Misty, is at least on the way there, you know, once he gets a little older. So everything seems resolved, right? Well, there is one more issue that does arise. Time. As of now, time does not seem to be an issue for Misty. I would argue that time is the issue. You might see, well, you know, she had a really good departure. I will give you that. That was an amazing departure. It had so much imagery loaded into it, especially the handkerchief. Up until Generation 4, I would have easily conceded that she was going to go back to him. Heck, even after Generation 5, this would have mostly been out of gag reflex for Nagai shipping. I would have also admitted that, yeah, she's probably going to go back to him. And I mean, if you look at her Hoenn appearance, she appears she's getting more mature, Ash is getting more mature. If you look at the Misty fishing lure, she's still attached to him. Everything seems to be pointing in the direction, especially the pure amount of time and length she's been there. I mean, heck, she's had hints going on for 4 generations. She's had at least some sort of memory or something for 5. And she's traveled with him for 2, and she's had a cameo in 1, giving her a total of 3 generations with physical appearance, which is a huge amount of time, only superseded by Brock. But that's just it, though. All these hints, doesn't really cut it, leaving one unaddressed issue, the time factor. Speaking of which, it's now time to move on to Amourshipping, and then we can come back and address this time factor once we also have Amourshipping's issues to bring to the whole debate. But I mean, who are we kidding? I mean, come on. It's just about Serena's Canonical Crush. It's the only thing that this ship has, right? I mean, Ash, he just doesn't get it, right? He just doesn't even see it, or he chooses not to see it, right? It's because he's loyal to Misty. That's the reason. And this is totally not a canon ship. There's no way this could be it. There's no way this can compare, right? Let's clear some of the conditions to have this shipping discussion actually work out in the end. So, Ash XYZ and Ash Original Series are almost 2 completely different characters. They may have basic character traits that are the same, however their whole attitude is almost completely shifted. I could rant on and on about this all day, however I'm going to keep it to a minimum and just say, when comparing Pokeshipping and Amourshipping, you need to draw a fine line between what Ash's character was then and now. Ash's character now, as of XYZ, is a more mature, more serious character. I mean, you could say he's more like a teen, almost, a young teen, whereas he's definitely a 10-year-old. I have a 10-year-old brother. I know how 10-year-olds act. In Pokeshipping, that was definitely a 10-year-old. Ash is definitely the more mature side of this relationship, too. All pointing to the fact that when we compare these ships, we cannot fall back on saying, well, he was not like he was in Pokeshipping, or the reverse, saying he wasn't like he was in Amourshipping, because they are 2 very different Ash Ketchums. All that being said, all that being thrown out there, let's continue with the actual hints. So in the beginning, Serena's off in the woods, gets lost, Ash comes and helps her, gives her a handkerchief, to tie up her leg or whatever, and then helps her out of the woods. All fair and dandy, except she now develops a lifelong crush on Ash, thus sparking the beginning of Amourshipping, at the same time cementing it conveniently as the first traveling companion that Ash ever met, even though he didn't really travel with her except for out of the woods at the time. Serena then becomes a professional stalker and starts stalking Ash with the intention to return the handkerchief, of course, that's the only reason she was stalking Ash, and then Ash, of course, invites her along, being supposedly naive to her intentions. However, he did perceive that the reason that she was there was to follow them. However, her full intentions might not have been clearly apparent to him. And thus, Serena and Ash are now traveling companions. We later find that Ash at least takes some sort of notice in Serena because he has the same blank-faced expression similar to the Ghost of Maiden's Peak with Misty in the Camino when he sees Serena in her Fennekin outfit and she's presented with a similar glowy background, and even though the whole cast is there, it's very obvious Ash is the one that the whole attention is focused on. Additionally, Ash is often seen doing a nose rub or a cheek scratch when nervous, especially around Serena, which at times when he invites her along or when he tells her, he's proud of her or something like that. All this forms a pretty strong case for Ash liking Serena or at least being attracted to her in some way. However, it's not conclusive enough for one to argue that it can be considered a hard fact of the case. It's simply a high likelihood that I'm not comfortable with saying is confirmed. Additionally, they're often thrown together as a pair, as in when they were riding Mammothswine or when they went down underwater in that submarine. Additionally, there seems to be a special concern between the two, with them more likely to see about the other before they go on to other people, usually calling each other's names first, along with specifically helping or protecting the other person, whereas they could be helping Bonnie or Clement or someone else. However, they specifically helped the other, similar as to in Pokeshipping. Now to address the issue of the supposed shallowness of Amourshipping, since there appears to be no real conflict between Ash and Serena. Oddly enough, this issue is actually what makes Amourshipping so amazing, especially when it finally resolves the issue near the end of the series, specifically around when there's the Wulfric fight, and in some ways with the kiss, but less so. So, with the Wulfric fight, Ash gets defeated, he goes into the forest, he's depressed, he skulks off, Serena goes to comfort him. Now, up to this point, their relationship has been kind of stagnant, and in many ways, it has been kind of shallow. In other ways, not. They do have a deep relationship on some fronts, but on a fundamental level, there is a false foundation it's built upon. There are false assumptions within the relationship. Ash assumes that Serena is not into him. He has no idea. Well, even if he does have an idea, he doesn't have a firm idea, or it's not on the forefront of his mind that her actions are coming out of a crush on him. Same idea. Serena is coming from the standpoint of an admirer. She can't fully judge Ash's actions as you would reasonably with someone you're forming a normal relationship with, which is part of the problem with coming into a relationship with someone you have a crush on, by the way. So, after Serena and Ash resolve this issue with the Wulfric fight, after that barrier's breaking down, it acts kind of as a catalyst for them to start developing a real deeper relationship that allows for something like a real romantic relationship to happen. However, it can't happen until Serena becomes candid about her crush. But it does help break down some of the barriers between Ash and Serena, pushing them in that direction and also allowing their relationship to be on a deeper level. And it also gives Serena a time to break down her mold a bit, because she finally is confrontational with Ash, which is an important step in forming a relationship. You can't have a relationship without conflict, and that's what this provides. So, now moving on to the next stage, finally, we can talk about the Amor kiss. With his previous kiss only being with Latias and Melanie, well, it stands as a milestone for the entire Pokemon anime series as the first female traveling companion in an actual main series kiss. It also stands as a huge thing for Amourshipping and the relationship growth, because it shows a new assertiveness and possibilities that were immediately opened up to the Amourshipping to make it a canonical thing. It is not canon. I will say that right now. Amourshipping is not canon. Neither is Pokeshipping. However, there is the profound possibility now that Serena was assertive and Ash now clearly knows her intentions. But however, this opens up a huge issue on the front of Pokeshipping. Remember that time issue we were discussing earlier? Well, now it's come. So basically, well, Pokeshipping is still a strong suit. I will say that. Pokeshipping has a strong suit. It has a strong likelihood of still being canon in the end. It has been greatly reduced in status due to the bringing about of a noticing of another female character, her advances on him, which he would have rebuked had they been a serious affront to a current lasting relationship, which people assumed was with Misty. However, this has proven that Ash is either a really cruel man, or he is not in a relationship with anyone right now, or in some sort of commitment, or has someone else. So in the end, when all is said and done, and you take into consideration that Misty is no longer the technical first, you just don't have as strong a suit anymore, and Amourshipping takes first place due to Ash's seeming willingness and Serena's seeming determination to have a relationship in the end that could become canon. Now, while not eliminating the possibility of Pokeshipping, in the end, Amourshipping takes first place in a close race.